Hi, Teacher Neil here. How are you guys? Good. I hope you're doing well. So, today I wanted to talk a little bit about compensation at VIPKID. I know there's been several videos on this. I think most of the videos kind of give examples of what the compensation was like for those specific teachers. I was going to approach the topic by just explaining it a little bit more in general and using like calculations for people to estimate based on how much they want to work, what they can expect to get paid, right? So when you discuss your rate with VIPKID, it's my understanding that teachers, if they do not have a teaching certificate like myself, the highest they can get per class, and a class is a 25-minute teaching period, can go anywhere up to 30 minutes, not longer than 30 minutes. You can get paid a maximum for that class of $8 for the class. Okay, so the minimum is $7. So there's not much of a spread there, $7 or $8. That's your range if you don't have a teaching certificate. If you have a teaching certificate, the most you'll get paid for that class is $8.50. So overall, it's a $1.50 range on approximately 25-minute period of teaching. So not a huge spread there. It's unlikely one teacher is really cashing in versus another based on that rate, right? Okay, so that's the base rate. Okay, so after the base rate, the biggest driver of how much you're going to make at VIPKID is the amount of hours that you choose to work, and how much those hours are likely to be filled, in particular if they're overlapping with what VIPKID defines as the peak time slots, or the peak time slots, which are really when students are most available to take these lessons in Beijing. So on a weekday, there's 2 hours worth of peak time slots. It corresponds with Beijing time of 7 to 9 p.m. For me, in Central European time, since I moved from New York to Barcelona, that falls from 12 to 2 p.m. Peak time. It's highly likely, if you have slots available during those hours, that you're going to get booked. Normal peak time on weekdays makes up another 2 hours around that. So in total, you've got 4 hours on weekdays where you're highly likely to get booked. If all your other qualifications, your introduction video, everything else you're doing to kind of market yourself to students and parents is working, right? It's likely you're going to get booked for at least 4 hours a weekday if you make those slots available, if you're available at those peak time slots, okay? Then it's a matter of really, how much you want to work in a week. So let's say on the lower end, you're a teacher that is available for a full calendar month at VIPKID, but you're planning to work about 10 hours a week for each of the weeks during that calendar month. The calendar month has about 4.5 weeks. At 10 hours a week, we're talking about totally in a month, you're working 45 hours in that month. Your base rate, like we talked about, is for a 25-minute period. In 1 hours of work, you can fit in 2 of those periods. So it's basically your base rate times 2 plus a number of different incentives, which I'll get into. But approximately your hourly rate comes up to, on the lower end, I would say the lower end is really $18 an hour. The higher end without a teaching certificate is $24, $25 an hour. So that times the 45, times the 45 hours that you can work. Let's say you're somewhere on the lower end of that rate with incentives. You're making $20 an hour. So if you work 10 hours a week for a full month, you're basically making $900 US dollars that month, okay, at 10 hours a week. So that's not bad. If you take that up to an easily attainable goal of 20 hours a week, if you're interested in working 20 hours a week, it's highly likely you can get that much work booked pretty easily. Then you're taking up your compensation at that $20 per hour rate, the lower end of the spectrum, to $1,800 a month. For basically half-time work, you're getting $1,800 a month on the lower end of the rate and the incentive spectrum. So not bad. On the higher end, you're clearing $2,000 a month. You're maybe at $21,250 a month by working half time, so 20 hours a week for a whole month, for 4.5 weeks in a month. So not bad. Then one other point to note is that I was talking specifically about working on weekdays and peak time slots available on weekdays, 10 to 20 hours a week, assuming weekday time slots. Of course, if you want to add in any hours or substitute like alternative to working on weekdays, work on the weekends, students in Beijing are much more available on the weekends. They don't have school. They don't have as many extracurricular activities on the weekends. You can easily get a number of hours of student teaching time on the weekends if you're interested in that. So there's way more peak time slots available then. So yeah, you can easily fill up your time slot or take your hours over your weekday goal with the weekends. Okay, so again, on the lower end of the spectrum, you're working 10 hours a week for a full month. You're making close to $1,000 on the lower end of the base rate as well. So you're on the bottom end of how much you're working and the rate, you're making $1,000 a month. If you push that up to half time in a month, even at the lower end of the rate, you're making about $1,800 a month. And if you then are not on the lowest end of the rate, you're somewhere in the middle to the higher end, you could easily be clearing $2,000 a month working half time. So not bad at all for a half time, part time teaching gig. Okay, so getting into then the additional incentives that play around with where you fall in that rate spectrum. So there's a standard dollar participation incentive that you get for every class that you commit to, sign up for, make available, have a student signed up for, and that you show up for on time. Whether that student is a no-show or not, or a number of different criteria that they can fall on, so IT problems, etc., you still get that dollar participation incentive if you take the class, show up on time, and attempt to teach the class if there's a student, right? So that's the participation incentive. On top of that, you get, if you teach between 30 and 44 classes in a month, you get an extra 50-cent incentive per every class that you've had in that month. And then if you teach over 45 classes in a month, which is very easy to do because 45 classes in a month only equates to 22.5 hours of work in a month. So even if you're working, less than 10 hours a week, but over 5 hours a week in a month, you can clear that target. Even just about 5 hours a week at 4.5 weeks in a month, you can clear that 45 class in a month target. In which case, if you clear that, you're going to be making an extra $1 for every class. So that's $2 extra per class that you should get. So even if your base rate is on the lowest end of the class rate, so the half hour, 25-minute class, you're getting $7 for that class. You're now at $9 for that class. So in an hour, that's $18 at the bottom, right? If you're at that $8 higher end without a teaching certificate base rate per class, now you're at $10, right, with that incentive. And then on top of this incentive, if you open up slots to be booked within a 24-hour period, so you select the box to make those classes last-minute bookings. A student can book them up to an hour within a 24-hour period, up to an hour before the class starts. You get an extra $2 for every one of those classes that's booked. So you're taking up your rate effectively with that in an hour. If you have enough of those classes balancing out your schedule, you're taking up your rate beyond the $20, closer to like $22, $24 an hour with some of those last minute bookings in there. So there's definitely some room to grow with the way you play around with your schedule, with meeting different incentives that are offered. And on top of that, if you're teaching trial classes, you get an extra $5 incentive for every trial student that signs up. In just my first week of teaching, I got one trial student to sign up so far, so that's an extra $5 there for me. Of course, there's referral incentives during the period of, right around Thanksgiving through the end of December. you get $150 per referral that you get to sign up, so really not bad. And you know, there's other incentives I'm sure that are out there that I'm less aware of. But yeah, just going back to the general range, at 10 hours a week, working a full month at 10 hours a week, you should expect to be making close to $1,000, if not more or less, depending on your rate and incentives. And then at halftime, you're making just about $2,000 a month if you work about 20 hours a week. And then also depending on your rate, those incentives, etc. So hope that helps, and hope to see you guys next time. Okay, have a good one.